After 50 years in natural health, I'm Dr. Howard Pallay, and I'll show you how to get healthy and stay healthy naturally.
Welcome to episode 8 of Get Healthy, Stay Healthy Naturally podcasts with Dr. Howard Pallay. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about very, very common, probably the most common condition and symptom that people have, okay? And that's fatigue, or a lot of people like to call chronic fatigue syndrome. So we have a lot to discuss here because I want people to have a very good understanding. The problem when you try to treat a symptom is that there are multiple conditions and problems that can cause it. But this is a condition that's so prevalent in the world, and America in particular, and yet it's not really found on any blood work or MRIs or CT scans because it's about how you feel and how your body is functioning. It's not a disease condition necessarily. This is not to say that fatigue cannot be caused by serious conditions and should be checked out by your medical doctor and blood work and whatever you need to do. But as an alternative medicine healer, nutritional therapist, or what I like to call a functional nutrition specialist who's been doing this for 50 years, I'm going to share with you how you at home could attempt to evaluate why you're always tired and what you can do about it, okay? So to begin, we're going to talk about the most common non-disease causes of chronic fatigue syndrome, okay? Probably the most prevalent one is an undiagnosed sugar problem. Well, what does that mean? They have all kinds of tests, A1Cs and glucose tolerance tests and blood sugar levels. They have all kinds of tests for this, but there's a dirty little secret, okay? A lot of people have low blood sugar or hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, okay? It's not easily diagnosed, okay? In the old glucose tolerance test where you would not eat in the morning and then you go in and eat a little sugar cube and they would test your blood in a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 or even 6 hours sometimes. You could sometimes see what's called a flat curve hypoglycemia, but it really wasn't recognized much by the medical profession then, and it's not much more recognized today. But low blood sugar or hypoglycemia is a big deal, and it's a very, very common problem. Now, you can have fatigue with pre-diabetes or actual diabetes, which are, of course, high blood sugar or hyperglycemia, but people often have hypoglycemia undiagnosed for years. It's particularly prevalent when people get older and they don't feel like eating and they work a lot and they skip meals and go long times between meals, or they get on things like the fruitarian diet, which was popular a number of years ago, and they consume large amounts of fruit on an empty stomach, and fruit is a pure sugar source. Now, in episode 4, we talked about sugar metabolism at length, including hypoglycemia, so you can go and refer back to that episode for more details, but low blood sugar is a big deal. And it's really most commonly signified, if you don't mind me checking with my notes, your blood sugar offers a dual benefit. It improves your immediate baseline energy, and it also protects your long-term health. The strange thing about low blood sugar or hypoglycemia is that if it's untreated and undiagnosed for years, and people continue to eat a crappy diet, including a lot of sugar, a lot of fruit, skipping meals, eventually your pancreas will give up and not producing enough insulin, and then you have the beginnings of prediabetes and high blood sugar or hyperglycemia or diabetes. And that's a really interesting thing. It's probably the only condition in the body where you can go to what's considered to be a low active state and it turns into a high active state, okay? That's interesting knowledge, but the key thing is you have to stabilize your blood sugar, okay? So let's talk about some of the symptoms of that. I like to really discuss that it's often a secondary symptom to other conditions, but if it's not treated, your main condition is not going to get better, okay? So you'll have fatigue in the middle of the day, yawning. When you do eat, you'll feel sleepy and you want to close your eyes. So your sugar level is bouncing around and it's actually low. And this is your body telling you, danger, danger, fix me, okay? The treatment for this is actually pretty simple. You shouldn't go more than 3 hours without eating something. You shouldn't necessarily use large meals either, especially at night, which is also not good for weight, okay? The more you eat late in the day, we'll talk about weight more in one of the next episodes. And then you try to avoid sugars and candies and other sweets. You can have complex carbs, but you don't want to load up on regular carbs. And you don't want to eat a lot of carbs late in the day anyway, because that just makes you fat, because your metabolism is slowed down. And now you have all these extra calories, and your body's going to dump that into a fat storage system, because that's what fat is. It's stored energy in your muscles, in your connective tissue, in your fascia, and even in your liver, and you'll end up with a fatty liver as well. You shouldn't eat fruit on an empty stomach. It should be after eating other food, so the food mixes in together and the sugars release gradually. And we would prefer that you don't eat too much of the highly sweet foods, which is especially anything that you could squeeze a fruit and juice comes out, that's sugar water. So the best fruits really are apples, pears, bananas, papayas, avocados, cantaloupe, honeydew melon, and there are other exotic melons that are not super sweet that you can get in a Chinese market or a Korean market, okay? And then there are supplements that you take as well. Chromium picolinate is probably the most important one. A good multivitamin, a B complex. I have details on this in printouts that I've been using with my patients 50 years that will be put up onto my website and also made available by Full Scripts, which is the online ordering system for Emerson Ecologics. And we're going to discuss in the next episode why you need to take better quality supplements. We'll save that for then. Let's go to the second episode, cause of sugar metabolism, of fatigue syndrome. The most secondary cause of chronic fatigue syndrome is thyroid imbalances, thyroid dysfunction. The thyroid is an extremely sensitive endocrine gland. It's very sensitive to toxins, especially nicotine, caffeine, and even radiation. I had a patient years ago who was so sensitive with her thyroid that whenever there was a radiation leak at Indian Point up the river from New York City, she would see a dramatic change in how she felt. And it got to the point where I recommended that she moved out west, where the air is cleaner and away from nuclear power plants. Well, that's not an answer for everybody. I don't think nuclear power is the most evil thing in the world, but we don't need to get into that today anyway. The thyroid is almost like the parrot that they keep in mines to let them know in advance that there's a tremor, that there's a problem, that there's air quality is bad. It's sensitive to everything. The thyroid is particularly sensitive to freshly painted rooms, cigarette and cigar smoke. And then one of the strange things is it's very, very sensitive to caffeine. And people don't understand how addicted to caffeine that they are. When you ask a patient to start cutting back and get off their caffeine, they will usually come back in a week and say, Dr. Pallay, I just can't. It's not addictive like a heavy drug like heroin's opiates, but it's extremely addictive. And it gives people temporary energy to replace the fact that their energy is not good and they have this chronic fatigue syndrome. But if you fix the problem that's causing your fatigue, then you don't need all this caffeine, and it's really not all that healthy. All right, let's go to number 3, which is adrenal fatigue, okay? I like to call it also post-stress crash or post-viral crash, okay? When people talk about long COVID, and many of you have probably heard that discussion, when I see a post-COVID patient, the first thing I evaluate is that their adrenals crash. The adrenals are small endocrine glands that sit on top of the kidney, and they make your corticosteroids, and they make adrenaline, or what is also known as norepinephrine. Adrenaline is very interesting. If you drive a car and you've ever almost been in an accident and you get that warm flush up your spine, that's an adrenaline surge. That's the classic thing of the mother lifting, the edge of a car off of their baby carriage, and they become Herculean or have Hulk-like strength to protect their baby. Also, when you get this adrenaline surge, it's almost as if time slows down and people can be more sensitized to what's going on and more reactive. So adrenals are very interesting glands. When people have been sick and people have had long COVID and people have had really bad stress, the adrenals will crash. And of course, normally, especially in younger people, they're going to return back to normal on their own. But they don't really always do that. And so sometimes we have to fix the adrenals. The way I treat adrenals is, number one, we use an adrenal supplement. And it's interesting enough, many companies sell adrenal supplements, many nutritional companies, and we will discuss at length about why you buy from certain companies and not others. Hint, hint, Costco and BJ's Warehouse and CVS and Walgreens, they don't make supplements. So when you look on the back of a supplement bottle, it'll say manufactured for, distributed by, or manufactured by. Well, manufactured by means that's the company that made it. All the other ones are made by somebody else. And you don't want to know who it is. You don't want to know if they're making a good product. How do you trust these people? Okay. I will talk more about this in a very soon episode. So getting back to the adrenals have something called a sodium pump. So you need salt for the adrenals. So if I see somebody having an adrenal problem, I want them to drink more water and I want them to take salt, unless they have what I call salt reactive high blood pressure. But believe it or not, very few people who have high blood pressure are actually salt reactive. It's a very small subset. And you can easily figure it out. You go on salt for a few days. If your blood pressure goes up, maybe salt is not okay for you, but a few days of it may help dramatically in helping your adrenals, along with taking a very good adrenal supplement. Obviously, it would be nice to decrease the stress in your life. We don't all have that availability, so you just do the best you can. Finally, just to discuss this a little further, you can also have a chronic fatigue from digestive problems, and when your liver is not functioning well and it's actually overwhelmed a little bit. So cleaning up your diet is a big answer here. You should only eat food on a full stomach. When there's other food that it can mix with, you shouldn't eat the really juicy fruits too much at all. You got to get off of pure sugar and candy and cake. And then you take supplements to support one of these major conditions that causes chronic fatigue syndrome. Check out my podcast, other podcasts, and my website, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more.
Please visit my website, gethealthystayhealthynaturally.com for more info and to directly order my favorite nutritional supplements and treatment protocols with a nice discount and free shipping too.